Hey, good morning, church. Now, there's the sunrise. And back there is the moon setting. The moon definitely doesn't, the camera doesn't do justice to the moon. It's beautiful this morning. Two great lights, one to rule the day and the other to rule the night. Genesis. Today, in the one-year Bible reading in the New Testament portion, Matthew chapter 27, we're reading about the crucifixion of Jesus. What can you say? Well, three. I'm gonna sum it up in three, under three headings, being a preacher and all. Heading number one is it is understated. You ever thought how understated the crucifixion accounts are? Matthew simply says they nailed him to the cross. And maybe it's that way because everybody in Matthew's day, when he wrote his gospel, they knew what a crucifixion was. It's horrendous. It was ugly. Roman citizens couldn't even be crucified, only slaves and Jews and people like that. Anyhow, it took the Passion of the Christ, Mel Gibson's movie, to show a lot of us just what all was involved, but it just seems so simple and understated to me. And that gives it the ring of truth as well. The second thing I notice about the crucifixion is the ugliness of sin. You know, this is what it took to pay the price for our sin. You know, sometimes we just kind of slough off our sin and no big deal, I'm not that bad, I'm a pretty good person. It's our sin that required the betrayals, the mockery, the scourging, the crucifixion itself, the hours of suffering and agony on the cross, the thirst. Even when God turned away and Jesus said, my God, why have you forsaken me? Boy, this could be a whole separate heading, the mystery of the cross. But the primary punishment for sin in hell will be the absence of God. Wherever hell is, that it's the absence of God. And I think we have no idea just how horrifying the absence of God is. But Jesus had to experience that. He had to experience all the punishment that we would have taken for our sin, for the sins of the whole world. That's what it took. And don't think that this is some kind of child abuse of God abusing his son. No, Jesus was a full-grown man and a full partner in the Godhead. And the Father suffered as well, as you can imagine. And Father and Son were in complete agreement that this is what it took and this is what they were going to do. Oh, the ugliness of our sin. And then finally, it's the love of God. Although this was the heaviest, highest price to pay, to God, we were worth it. You know, yesterday, Moses, we were in the one-year Bible, we were reading how Moses went before God and God passed in front of him and declared his nature. He says, I'm God. I'm the one who forgives sin to 1,000 generations. But then he said, but I do not allow the guilty to go unpunished. It holds the guilty accountable. That's an interesting juxtaposition. How do you forgive sin and hold the guilty accountable at the same time? Well, the cross is the answer to that. The cross is the answer to that. On the cross, God punished your sin and mine. And because that satisfied his just nature, his righteous nature, that sin cannot go unpunished, because our sin was punished, then God was free within his own nature to be true to himself and forgive sin without compromising his justice. Forgive our sin. Whoa, the love of God. I've been crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me. And the life that I now live, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and delivered himself for me. He loved you as an individual and delivered himself for you and me. God loves you, my friends, and so do I.